So 5 things I wish I knew before starting my podcast a couple of years ago. We started our podcast, we launched at number 1 in the Apple Parenting podcast charts, which is crazy because we are not celebrities. We were above Sophie Ellis-Bextor, a whole pile of parenting podcasts that are huge, and it's really easily done, but there was a lot of things I've learned through the years of doing the podcast I wanted to share with you guys. So listen along, get all the tips, soak up my knowledge, and do your podcast because it's honestly so much fun.
Weekends spent in the studio, weekdays kinda like bros. I think back and it's obvious.
So my podcast is called Baby Name Envy. I know it's about baby names. That's because my YouTube channel, the most successful series on my YouTube channel, which is about parenting in general, but I do every single week a list of baby names, and it's just been the most successful thing there, and I've really followed it. But I wanted to expand on that format. So my background is advertising, marketing, branding, mainly big brands I worked with portfolios of products and therefore portfolios of content. And one of the things we talked about is being T-shaped. Whoop. So when you've got a strong idea, have a look at what's your strongest idea for your business or your content at the moment, and how could you take that into audio. If you're wondering why audio, it is so fast growing. It's one of the fastest growing mediums, and it's really global, really easy to get that global audience. So our podcast was listened to all around the world. We were like number 1 in Bermuda, New Zealand, and I've got so much press from doing it. I've done so much TV. Let me know if you're a journalist. I swear they must look at the podcast charts and go down and know that there's topics and relevant conversation stuff. So I've literally done so much radio. I've now been signed as a BBC correspondent for baby names. I just did an interview with BBC Radio Scotland just now. I've done TV, lots and lots of telly, Steph's Pat Lunch, and Good Morning Britain and stuff like that when there's a baby name segment. So if you do have a business that you want to get out there, podcast is a really great idea. All of them I see at the moment is content that's around how to grow 1 million followers, how to make this much money in this many months. And I think if you go into it with that, you will find it too stressful. So go into it because you love it. That will come through in your voice, and that will find you your genuine community, and then it will be self-fulfilling prophecy that more people will want to come and listen and give you money for it. And I also have a freebie for you to help you get your creative career off the ground, and that is a whole month's free membership to Skillshare. So Skillshare is an amazing online learning platform where thousands of business leaders, creatives, craft people who do this as their full-time job give you tips and advice, and you can either learn the craft there, but what they're doing for January is this skill reset to really focus on building your business. So whether or not you want to understand your personal brand and then have a plan towards a business, whether you want to create logos and design the look and feel of your brand, which is really important. We'll talk about it for a podcast as well, how to get that little really catchy thumbnail. You've got a business but you don't have an online presence, how to do that. There's literally so many amazing courses that you can do on Skillshare for free this entire month, the first 1,000 people who click the link below, and I'll link the courses as well that I've absolutely loved. I just did Kate Aaron's, and she is like a professional one-to-one coach, but she's done this course which is great, so you can actually do it for free at home this month with the link, and it is Find Success Online, Grow Your Social Following into a Creative Business. And that's what I really need, because I've got lots and lots of creative ideas, but I'm not the most disciplined at then turning that into business. How does this business model look, and the business side of vlogging, of podcasting? You know, I do a lot of PR. I'm great at that. I'm good at the design side of it. I'm good at the creative ideas side of it, but I'm not good at the business side of it. And I make money through YouTube mainly. So I need to know where else I can make money from in the rest of my portfolio. So it's really fascinating and really useful. And it's basically what I miss, which is a team. You know, if you've got a creative project that you're doing at home, and then at work you'd have a whole team of people who could help you do this, or you do it together, or you delegate the bits you're not good at. But when it's just yourself, I find as a creative, particularly one working from home on like a side hustle, I really miss that camaraderie. And I felt like with Skillshare I almost had that, like I could tap into little people's knowledge. So I'll link it below. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for continuing to support the channel, support you guys, and I'll leave the link below, and do take it out because it's a really good offer. So part 1 is planning your podcast. So think of your podcast as the top funnel of your business or your content. So it's going to be reaching a lot of people and a lot of new audiences because people are finding audio all the time. So that's how I sort of thought about mine, and we did ours as a dilemma show rather than just me giving names. It was all dilemmas. I asked people to write in and we get tons and tons of emails. So set up your email address for your podcast if you're going to do that. But the number one question I had when starting my podcast was, do I have guests or not? So originally I was going to have guests and have guests help me to talk about their baby names or help me with people's dilemmas straight away. And I thought straight away this is just going to be a nightmare because I will be in admin hell trying to coordinate their times, my times. It would take so long, and if I want to do a weekly podcast, I'd be working on it for months before it launches, and I'm impatient because I'm a creative person. I come up with the idea, I want it done by lunch. So I have my sister as my co-host, and I think have a think about your co-host rather than a guest format. The benefit is you bounce off each other, you know each other, you can make time just the two of you, you can share the research workload. And I think podcasts with two people are much more interactive because you're listening to a conversation rather than like this, me just chatting to you. It's more interesting when you've got somebody to bounce off. And I think audio works best when it's entertaining. Even baby names can be entertaining because me and my sister had so much chat, so much banter, so many sister laughs in our podcast. And that was people's favourite bit about the podcast. Like I just listened to it because I love to hear you two crack up together, and my sister takes the piss out of me a lot, so she was the perfect person for me. So think about who your co-host could be. My sister had never done anything like this in her life. She wasn't a YouTuber, she wasn't on Instagram or anything, and I just said to her, would you do it? She was up for it because audio is also not very daunting. So pick the person in your life who brings out your best, who you can perform with, like, you know, get up that level with because that will really, really help you. Right, it leads me into the length of your podcast. How long should your podcast go on for? And this is really important when you're crafting the podcast. So I wrote it as sections. I had 3 sections: intro, which was a little sister chat and a game between the two of us, 3 dilemmas, and then the outro was a Reddit type of or online kind of crazy name story, like the influencers who both fell out because they both called their name their baby like things like that. Then we would all discuss, and that gave us loads and loads of little snippets which we could use to promote the podcast as well, because they were kind of newsworthy, or they were stuff that was kind of in the press already. We were joining a conversation, so that's quite a good way of doing it. Put your sections together. So when it comes to length, we started off being told the advice that to do 25 minutes because it's the average drive time and lots of people listen in the car. Good advice, but actually I found that my longer podcast episodes that were more 45 to 50 minutes actually did better. And I think that's because people come back to them. Me personally, if I see a podcast is 23 minutes, I think it's going to be a bit rubbish. Like they didn't have enough effort to put into it. Like it's like the difference between watching like a 25-minute soap or a 45-minute Netflix episode, and you're like, it's going to be meaty, lots is going to happen in it. So think about your sections and your segments and try to get it, I would say, to between 35 to 45 minutes, because it is a long form. Audio is longer form. People stop and play it again, take it in the car, go on their walk with their dog, go on the school run, whatever. So have a think about your audience, what they'll be doing, and try to think about the time. My top tip, which I didn't do myself, and I wish I did, was to do a second shorter episode the same week. So while you're already recording, write a little different thing you can do that's 6 to 8 minutes long. So you could do, for me, I could have done 10 top names of the week that I love, and then done like 10 names, like a name list like I do on YouTube basically. So you see podcasts like 10% Happier, he'll have somebody that he interviews that week on a topic, and then he'll do a 6-minute meditation on that topic or discussion on that topic later on. So you can end up charging extra for a behind the scenes type of pod, but I think at the beginning when you're starting out, adding that second one would really, really help to nudge your podcast up into people's inboxes and into the charts. How to get a great chart placement, how we did it, we double dropped. We put 2 30-minute episodes out week 1, and I think that was what helped because it had a really high amount of listen time. So it was like they've listened to 2 episodes, and we just did really well because we launched it Also, what you can do is make a shareable Instagram story. So if you're going to ask people to share it, even your friends and family, or if you're going to send it around your workplace, make the little thing for them. So I made a little story, brand new podcast, our artwork and our logo, which I'll talk about in a second, the link to it, and even a little short talking introduction you could do. So you supply them with the content, say, please could you share this, rather than here's my podcast, it's the link to it here, you can get the artwork here. Literally make it as easy as possible for people to share. Make some shareable promo content, and you can do that really, really easily on Canva. If you would like me to do a video about how to do Canva and make your podcast artwork, then just let me know and I can do that as well. But there's plenty out there already on that. And try to get on other people's podcasts. So rather than having high profile guests on your podcast, it's much better for you to be on their podcast, because then you're heard by their audience. And there's so many people I've discovered through watching somebody I love, and then they're with somebody that they recommend, and then I would bounce onto their content, rather than trying to find a creator I like on someone else's platform, if that makes sense. So I was a guest on a few podcasts, like Made by Mama's podcast, Louise Pentland's Mother's Meeting podcast, and I did a few more other ones. And there is a website which I'll link below, which is called Podcast Guests, and you can put yourself on there as an expert in your field, and people can come and cherry pick and have you as a guest on their podcast. So it's a really, really good kind of forum for that. But think about, how can I be on someone else's podcast? Reach out to them. You know, my podcast is all about fitness. I see your audience, mums, would you like me to come on your podcast and talk about fitness for mums? Or my podcast is all about business, and I see you have a podcast which is about that as well. Would you like me to come on and talk about this topic that's really in the news at the moment? We could do a really quick discussion on your podcast, and try and get yourself onto theirs. Do that for free, of course. It's all about the exposure and the great content that you'll get from it. So tech-wise, this was my biggest nerves starting. Even though I already did YouTube and I knew how to edit, I didn't know anything about audio, and I wasn't sure how to do it. So there are courses you can do online, but I ended up doing the wrong thing, which was paying for producers, and I paid a lot of money for producers. The best time we actually had, the upside is it gives you confidence, it gives you that push, it gets you going, that you just want to turn up, talk, pay my money. I don't want to see that on Spotify by Friday, if that's kind of your vibe. But then you're paying for it. And as I said at the beginning, podcasts, I'll talk about money in a bit. Think of it as the top of your funnel, not your sales platform, because you want to be sell during a podcast. You want to entertain, be likable, and then say, go to my website to buy the stuff, you know? So a podcast is more about likability and entertaining and giving value to people as well about your business. So the best thing we did was just hire a little podcast studio. There are so many people just have them at the back of their office. We went to like a digital marketing agency, literally just sat in the back room they had their setup there, and I paid them really minimal amount because they weren't doing anything for us apart from just supplying us with a sound file at the end. And that worked really well if we didn't have anyone in the room with us, and we laughed the most during those. And really, you do want to be enjoying your podcast. If you're stressed about it, or there's someone in the room, or you're sort of too serious, it's difficult. So we had the most fun doing that, but I didn't want to do it at home. I found producing it at home too much, too stressful. I didn't enjoy it then. Threw my toys out the pram. No, I didn't. But that was too much on my shoulders, because you're doing the hosting, the production, the marketing. You know, you can't do all of it. You can if you literally do nothing else with your day and your life. But most of us have a job as well. My top tip for having less editing time is to act like you are live. So as soon as that record button goes on, you are live to the nation, and anything you say, please do not sweat, is recorded. Because in a podcast, it's so conversational. As long as you don't talk over the top of each other, which you won't too much, not too bad, then it will just come across as really, really natural. Somebody listening in their kitchen or their car feels like they're part of a conversation, not being hosted to. So that's the lovely thing about audio and podcast. It can be that you laugh, that you take a drink, that you cough, you know, just doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me. If I'm listening to a podcast, and ask yourself, does it bother you, your favourite podcast style, and just go with it, because then you'll have such minimal editing. We have barely any editing, because all we do is cut out if Naomi swears, or if one of us, normally we end up saying something about somebody that we know, like, oh, tell a story, and then we're like, we better cut that out because that wasn't an authorised story. So that's all we do. Then it's just cutting little bits out, and then you can easily do that yourself on Premiere Pro. just plug it in, you'll see it, there's a little snip tool, snip, 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 snip. You've got your audio file done and dusted, and it is so easy to upload a podcast. You can even do it now on YouTube, which I will link the how-to below. So I'm about to launch all my backlog of podcasts onto YouTube, which will be great for me because then I get the pre-roll money, the ad money, like I get for YouTube, but you can really easily upload onto Acast. It's what I do. I did Anchor as well. And when you upload, it's just getting your audio file, dragging it up there. It will upload as easy as uploading a file to a website or anything, or YouTube video, and it will automatically air it to all of the main platforms. So it's super easy. It's a one-stop shop. Don't let that put you off. Do it. We talked about guests and planning it, your production, your editing, your upload, your length, and how to promote your podcast. So the last thing is just about your artwork and your design and your look and feel and your titles. So I think this really helped us get more listeners and get that #1 spot. So we did a really simple artwork, literally our faces, our photos, which we edited to look nice, and then a simple background, very bold title. Have a think about your title of your podcast. You want it to almost play on attention is my top tip from my branding days. So Baby Name Envy was inspired by Revenge Body by Khloe Kardashian, how she had those two things together. I was like, that's quite cool. And Baby Name Envy was about the feeling you get when you get food envy, or you overhear a name, you think, I wish I'd heard that before, I wish I'd picked that. And it did really well, and we made our little intro. Every single episode that plays out at the beginning, and it sort of explains the podcast a little bit. So have a little think about it, and then I use terms like help, exclamation mark, crisis, exclamation mark, yikes, exclamation mark, to add a bit of drama to what people might think is going to be a really dry list of baby names, and it's not. But you'll see a lot of podcasts can use quite jarring or intriguing words and titles. So really think about your title before you hit record, and then you can always work to it. So I hope this has been encouraging and useful. I really do want you to start your podcast. If you have a podcast, you want me to check it out, and all of us check it out, let us know the title of it in the comment section below. Please let me know which has been the most useful tip from this video, so I can make more of them and lean into my new podcast consultation role. I'm really sorry that my podcast isn't around at the moment if you do listen to my podcast. Sorry, I'm not leaning in for a kiss. I'm just sat uncomfortably. My sister's sick, really sick, so we are on a pause, but I may be back with a different type of podcast one day. And thanks so much for Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Don't forget, the first 1,000 of you to click on the link below will get that free membership for a whole month, and you will learn so much that will help you in all your new ventures. Lots of love, guys. Bye bye.